All right, welcome to our Comp 426 project presentation. Our group is Neelu Gupta, Kevin Liu, Long Lei, and Aaron Zhang. We're really excited to show you what we've been working on, and we're quite proud of the website that we'll be presenting today. So without further ado, we'll get right into it. So what we did was we made a Fall Guys stat tracker, and I'll give you a little bit of background on what that means and what that really entails. So Fall Guys is a battle royale game that released on PC and console and took the gaming world by storm in the summer of 2020. Now, it was originally developed as a casual battle royale. You have a lobby of 60 or so players that are all trying to traverse a series of mini games that eliminate more and more players. And the goal of the game is to be the last one standing. And so due to this structure, the game is still competitive at its core. But because there is no support for skill tracking within Fall Guys itself, Fall Guys players don't have access to different statistics like how many wins they might have accrued, or their performance on different mini games that they play each and every show. And so our solution was that we have created Fall Guys Stats, which is a product to provide players a way to understand their performance. While it's fine for casual players to just enjoy the core game as it is, our website allows Fall Guys enthusiasts to take their passion to another level. Now, our target users are Fall Guys players. However, there's a specific focus on console players because on PC, several different overlays and trackers already exist that take in your statistics automatically and puts them in an overlay for you. Consoles like Xbox and PC don't have this alternative. And so if a Fall Guys player wants to track their stats, they're going to have to pull up an Excel spreadsheet and manually enter in each and every game and do a bunch of calculations and keep track of all of these numbers. Our application solves this problem for players, and we do that in a number of ways. First, we have an easy to use interface that's clean and nice to look at. Our statistics are inputted in a way that's conveniently lined up with the route overview screen that you see at the end of each game you play, which makes it really easy to just go down the line and enter in every single game and the medal that you've earned. We handle different types of calculations and show you a unique analysis of your games and your statistics. We break your numbers down on a minigame by minigame basis, and that can be really enlightening to players as it can show them different strengths and weaknesses in their game that they might not be aware of. That can make it really easy for them to figure out what they need to improve in order to get better. It's also just satisfying to see the number of wins that you tally over your Fall Guys career. Our website gives you a centralized location to see all of these different numbers in one place, very nicely presented. The last thing that our application provides, which really sets it apart, is this community statistics feature. Anytime you enter in numbers or information on the website, it's not just added to your personal profile, it's also added to the community database. And so when you go to the community statistics page, you can see exactly how you shape up against the competition. That can be informative, and it can also be fun to try and compete with your friends and try to race to the top of the leaderboard. So that's all I have for our introduction. Now Long is going to take you through the main functionality of our website.
Now let's go through a quick demo of our application. On the homepage, guests can immediately see the leaderboards of all registered users of the application. This gives incentive for users to register and input their scores to have a chance of having their name displayed on the leaderboards. The first leaderboard is sorted by the number of crowns a user has achieved, so the more games the user has won, the higher the placement. It also displays the win percentage of the user as well. The next leaderboard is sorted by the number of gold medals a user has earned. In Fall Guys, there are stages in which a user can earn medals, in which a gold medal represents if a user achieves first place in a particular stage. This is cool to see as it shows how many gold medals you have achieved in your career and the percentage of gold medals you have obtained in comparison to silver and bronze. We also have implemented a Twitter timeline of the official Fall Guys game profile. This is to allow users to keep up with the latest news and updates of Fall Guys. There are also features in which a user can update the tweets and load more tweets as they wish. Now, of course, we have a registration and login system for users in order to keep track of all leaderboards and stats. Users will be able to access all pages except the enter stats and career profile pages until they are logged in. To register or log in, you just hit the login/sign up button and click on the tab of your need. For registering, all you need to input is your username, email, and password. You will be immediately logged in after registration. At any chance you forget your password, we have provided the option to reset your password via email. After logging in, you have full access to the Enter Stats page, in which you can begin inputting your data from your games. In addition, you will now be able to access your profile page, which tracks and displays your detailed statistics of all your stages. The next page is the Community Stats page. This displays the statistics of the entire community combined. Here you get to see how the entire community as a whole is performing, which means you can compare how you perform in Fall Guys versus the entire community. This page presents the total number of shows, rounds, finals, and more stats that the community has participated in. We even display advanced statistics for each stage. In my opinion, I think the most interesting part of this project is definitely the Enter Stats page. To begin inputting your game data, you select how many rounds you've played and if you achieved a crown or not. The amount of cards displayed will vary on how many rounds you have selected from the drop-down tab. Next, type in the stage of each round. What's fascinating is that we have also included an autocomplete feature in the text input field. Finally, you select your medal that you have achieved from each stage. Once you're done, click on Submit and your data will be added and updated. You will then be prompted with a success message and have the ability to add another game or view your stats. There is also an option to delete your previous submission in the case that you made a mistake during input. Now here's the career profile page. Your career profile page will display your own detailed statistics that you have inputted. This will allow users to see their weaknesses and strengths and to improve on any weaknesses they may have never realized without this application. This is similar to the community stats page but is different in which it is exclusive to you only. Lastly, we have the extras page. Here we added some extra features to make the lives of users a bit simpler by removing the hassle of launching the game. The first section displays an infographic of the current shop in Fall Guys. This will allow the community to know what's currently in the store without having to ever launch the game on their computer. The infographic is automatically updated and will refresh at 12 AM UTC time. Finally, the last extra feature that we have added is a list of all achievements that players can obtain from playing Fall Guys. The main purpose of this page is to provide users the ability to check the shop or reference achievements when they are not at their usual setup.
Okay, now that we've discussed the functionality of our website, I'll be talking about some of the more technical aspects of our implementation. First, I'll start with an overview of our stack structure and architecture. Here in the client folder, we have all the front-end code. So for each page on the front end, we have an HTML file, a CSS file, and a JavaScript file, which uses jQuery. And then in the root folder of our project, we have the code for our backend server, which is a Express Node.js server. Here we have the code to initialize the server, and we have our REST API routes defined here, and all of the code to control the functions in this controllers file. For our database, we are using the Firebase Cloud Firestore database, and we're also using the Firebase authentication functionality. So here we initialize the database and we use it in almost all of our API functions. Now I'll go a little more in depth on our backend implementation. So here in the server.js file, we initialize the server and configure the Express app. And here we set up our custom API from the routes file I showed earlier. And one issue we were actually having while making the website is we wanted to use this third-party API that someone created listing all of the achievements in Fall Guys, but based on how their server was configured, we kept running into CORS errors saying that we didn't have access because of the strict origin. So the workaround we figured is we can create a custom path on our own server where we use Axios to call this URL, and we send the data back to our own front end without getting the CORS error. So this was a pretty effective solution for us. Alright, so here in the routes file, we define the paths for all the API functions, the get, post, put, and delete functions that we call from the front end, such as leaderboard and save round. And here in the controllers.js file, we define all of the functions. For example, here we export the leaderboard function, and we use the Firebase database. So the database is organized into collections of documents. So for example, here we have the users collection, and this query is finding the highest amount of crowns among users. And we would retrieve this data from the database here on the back end and then send the response to the front end. One issue that we ran into when working on the backend functions is dealing with the asynchronous nature of JavaScript. So after retrieving documents from a collection, they recommend using a for each to iterate each document and perform calculations within them. But when we would try to access the variables that were assigned inside of it, there would be errors because the for each had not finished yet, but the next line was already starting to run. So one solution we have here is assigning a promise variable to a map function. And then here we do a promise.all so that the rest of the function only begins to run when this promise had resolved. Another aspect of our backend implementation is our utilization of this .env file. So in order to use Firebase, we needed the Firebase config file, and we also needed to authenticate by signing in with our Firebase account. And so instead of storing this sensitive data in the controllers.js file, we put all the API keys and the username and password in the .env file, which is not tracked by Git through git ignore. And we can access all of that information from the .env instead of having it in plain text here in the config file. Okay, so now I'll do a bit of a walkthrough for our front-end implementation. So as I mentioned before, each page has the HTML file, the styles file, and a JavaScript file. Here we do all the setup for our page, and we define the root div. Because we use jQuery to manipulate the DOM, it'll manipulate this root div. And connecting back to the backend I was talking about, we make Axios calls to the backend. For example, here's a get to the leaderboard path, and we display the retrieved data by appending it to an HTML string and then appending it to the root div. We also use Firebase authentication on the front end to determine whether or not a user is signed in. For example, when we render the navbar, we call this function to determine whether or not there's a user. So here, if there is a user, we display their username and a sign out button. But if there is no user, then we replace it with a sign in button. So that's one example of how we dynamically change the page based on the user. I hope this brief walkthrough was helpful in understanding the structure of our app and our technical implementation.
Okay, now that we've gone over the functionality of our website, I would like to talk about some improvements and future plans that we have for our project. And so number one is data integrity. At the moment, we do not have any checks for user inputted data. And so that means that it is very possible for users to input whatever they want, however they like, and however many times they want, which significantly affects how our site runs. While our data is calculated correctly, if the data itself is corrupted based on illegitimate information, this causes issues. And so, if possible, this is something that we wish we could have gotten to and could potentially implement in the future, which is just like either simply checks to make sure that entries are accurate and truthful, and that should stabilize our product a lot more. The second thing is email verification. Similar to the first issue, email verification should help to remove any issues on the account side of things. Now we move into a few improvements that are not necessarily product breaking, but simple improvements that we think would be nice. And so the first one will be data visualization. Right now at the moment we only have some simple tables to display information. If possible, this is something that we were considering but didn't have time to get to, but we would have liked to implement more interesting visuals or ways to see your stats. Because we are a stat-based website, we want to provide a more interesting way of presenting the stats if possible. Unfortunately, we did not get to implement that, but that is something that potentially could be an improvement going forwards. Additionally, we could be tracking more data. We do have very basic stats at the moment, but there are a lot more additional extra stats that we could implement just for fun mainly. We have implemented like the most core stats such as crowns, medals, and that sort of thing that best give an idea of how you perform in the game. But we were thinking about maybe adding some more elements such as tracking the in-game currency called kudos and that sort of thing. And along those lines, if possible, we would like to increase more personalization of the accounts. And so that means having either, for example, a profile picture, any other kind of account details that would help to just like create a unique user experience and really make the user feel like they have control and can be proud of their account. On a more technical side, for example, our stats page, or our extras page, right now has some load time issues, and we are using an external API in which the information that's downloaded doesn't necessarily match our schema in terms of design, and so that's something that we could look to improve on as well. Lastly, I think going forwards, when we built this product, we hadn't considered how we plan to update our information as like along with the game. The game is always changing. It's always going to be adding maps, new game modes, new skins, that sort of thing. We do depend on an API for achievements and cosmetics at the moment. However, things such as maps and other core game information would have to be manually updated. And so that's something that we could potentially improve upon, in the sense that we could have implemented a much easier way for either to automatically update our site with new game data, or to have a more efficient way of manually updating. But all in all, that is our site. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to please click around and test out our site for us, and we hope you enjoy. And again, thanks for watching.